Here's Candace Owens taking it one step further, saying no matter how hard the GOP tries to make radical Islam happen, the base doesn't care about it. We are way more concerned about Israel. You can deny reality and scream about Tucker, but the party can no longer be governed by those who refuse to acknowledge the Zionist elephant in the room. I'm just trying to spare you guys the inevitable $1 billion ISIS is coming digital campaign, wherein a bunch of online influencers suddenly pretend they're deeply concerned about the threat of radical Islam. Our concerns about the Middle East begin with the Israeli occupation of DC. Hope this helps. Candace Owens is running around with copies of the Talmudic Jew. She has the biggest audience out of any political commentator in the country. She's getting like 160,000 live concurrent viewers tuning in every damn day when she's talking about politics, when she's talking about whatever conspiracy theories she wants to talk about. And sometimes she's bringing up good points as well. This right here is maybe not the best point, because I don't think Americans care about, I think Americans do care about radical Islam because they've been propagandized. And the correct point here that she is making, which Tucker also makes a lot, is that the reason as to why America cares so much about quote unquote radical Islam is because it actually suits Israel's purpose. And we know that that is the case. We know that that is the case with the likes of Tommy Robinson, for example, who is a Mossad agent in the UK, the #1 Islamophobe, total fascist. Also, his position is to simply shift the attention and priorities back to Muslims over and over and over again. Same thing in the United States of America. We know for a fact from the Israeli government's own focus group message test that they realize that the Western world no longer Israel. So what they actually have figured out is a much better way to communicate the issue is talking about radical Islam, the threat of jihadism, the threat of Islamic jihadism, fomenting Islamophobia. There is truth to this commentary. There is truth to this statement from Candace Owens once again, but it should not be left to Candace Owens to be saying these things. What Candace is doing here is correct. I mean, she's popping off. She is taking advantage of the void in the media, the void in discourse. The reality of the matter is I can't make this point because I am Muslim, okay? Because my name is Hasan. There are going to be a lot of right-wingers who won't listen to me, okay? That's just the case. But a lot of right-wingers love hearing Candace Owens say this. A lot of liberals love hearing Candace Owens say this. And Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are the people who are actually presenting this position. And this position is correct. Now, at least Tucker Carlson doesn't actually lean fully into the most insane anti-Semitic conspiracies, even though if you were to ask me, I do believe he is anti-Semitic. I mean, he's hired every an anti-Semite in the book. He's just too smart to never actually say, he's too smart to never actually fully say it's the Jews. He'll just lead you down the water. For Candace, for example, what she's doing, and the reason why I find it distasteful, the reason why I actually criticize it quite a bit, is because she's basically doing the Randy Fine thing, right? The reversal of the Randy Fine thing. Now, obviously, the Randy Fine thing is much more impactful. He's a congressperson. And also, there is systematic disenfranchisement and direct systematic racism that Muslims are subjected to, that Jews are not. So in that regard, it's almost like a role reversal, but it's not as impactful as like Randy Fine when he does Islamophobia. Just like when someone is doing anti-black racism, it's obviously going to be different than when someone is being anti-Semitic. There is no systematic disenfranchisement that you're presenting as a real threat, at least for now, against Jews living in the United States of America in contemporary society. But when she does the anti-Semitism, when she does the anti-Semitic takes as a way to combat the narratives, right, in her mind, she's basically doing the same Randy Fine is doing. Same with Nick Fuentes, right? When Nick Fuentes turns around and says like, oh, I can't speak about the Jews in the way that Randy Fine, who is Jewish, speaks about Muslims. How dare you?
Randy Fine says it's funny that children are starving in Gaza. He's smug about it. He thinks he's in any position to judge anybody, make moral judgments. You are repugnant. Randy Fine, you are repugnant, you are disgusting, you will burn in hell. And everyone agrees with me on this. Don't make them choose between me and you.
That is consistent for some people. The problem here is that everybody is being insincere, okay? Everyone is being insincere when they act as though we can't see what the is going on. They act like you can just put the toothpaste back in the tube. They act like the Republicans, for example, can act like they can run on hating on every minority, but then also doing DEI just for Jews, okay? That's not going to happen. That's the establishment Republicans trying to do that. They're always going to lose to the Nick Fuentes of the world, okay? Because Nick Fuentes has a more honest, more maximalist position on hating on everybody, and it's more logically consistent. Only the white folks don't get any sort of serious hate. We defend the white people, and everyone that we cut out of the equation as non-whites gets the receiving end of fascism, right? And Jews are part of that marginalized identity. And as a matter of fact, for Nick Fuentes and many others, they also literally say Jews are responsible. Organized Jewry is responsible for this kind of wokeness.
I would say, though, that the main challenge to that, a big challenge to that, is organized Jewry in America. I don't think Bill Ackman is capable of that. I don't think Sheldon Adelson is capable of that. I don't think Yoram Hazony is capable of that, for that matter.
You know, the Frankfurt School style narratives that Nazis also leaned into, that Jews created wokeness. They invented wokeness to destabilize and destroy the West and try to combat white supremacy, which is supreme, which is the established fact. Like, that's their attitude, right? And yeah, and they did mass migration. They did the Great Replacement, all this stuff. The problem is those are also incredibly damaging ideas. They're not just like silly conspiracy theories. These are conspiracy theories that have turned into very real positions and movement builders in the past that have become really dangerous, really dominant, really deadly. So in an effort to fight back against this, you have to present a logical statement. You have to say, look, man, Jews are not responsible for all the issues that you're experiencing, and that there is no like organized Jewry that is dominating your life. But in that regard, when I say stuff like that, there's two problems. One, I'm Muslim, so people don't really give a about what I have to say about Islamophobia in general. They go, shut the fuck up. You're a dirty sand guy, and you're just defending, you're an Islamist fundamentalist. I've heard every insane statement in the books, right? I mean, they say that to Ilhan Omar too. Ilhan Omar is, I didn't want to say the actual thing that they say with the sand, or whatever. With Ilhan Omar is like pro-trans, right? But they'll say like she's a fundamentalist, she's barbaric, she's backwards, right? Which is crazy. It's like she's woker than 99.9% of congresspersons, but because she wears a hijab and she's Somali and she's black and she's Muslim, they literally will get away with claiming that she's actually backwards and barbaric. It's nuts. But in any case, that's the one issue that I run into, given my background. People don't listen to me on this issue. That's why so many people who agree with me on the policies now will still run around and call me a terrorist over and over again, and their audiences don't think twice about this. The other problem is, and this is something that I tried to broach with Van Lathan as well, I'm sorry, okay, it brings me no pleasure to say this, the reality of the matter is, a lot of Jewish advocacy groups unironically wear that on their chest. So what do you expect people to think? If you have a million different Jewish organizations that are like, Jewish National Fund, Jewish this, Jewish that, running around being like, Israel is the most consequential thing, shut the fuck up, you better not talk about Israel. Oh my God, this Jewish director, Jonathan Glazer, actually criticized Israel. He's an anti-Semite. We must actually never give him a job again. Oh my God, a bunch of people in Hollywood, including many Jews in Hollywood, that are demanding to boycott Israel. How about those guys never get a job ever again? What do you think is going to happen when people see that? You can't wear the on your chest non-stop and then assume that a bunch of goyim, right? A bunch of cornbread white boys are not going to hear that, see that, and tie that back to what they've heard already about how there are so many Jews in positions of power within finance, within the government, within Hollywood. And then they tie all of that back together and they go, okay, maybe Jews do control the media, and maybe America is actually Zog. And then we have to sit there and talk about how damaging it is to run along with these sort of narratives. That only causes people to double down, okay? That only causes people to double down. They go, oh, here we go again. There's people dying. You can't even say people shouldn't die. And what is actually an issue of much more significance in Western media is the feelings of a bunch of pro-Israel students in Columbia campus where they're acting like there's pogroms taking place. Meanwhile, there's actual Holocaust taking place, and we can see it with our own two eyes, and everybody wants me to give a shit about some of the wealthiest students of all time who are running around with Israel flags and trying to defend the genocide publicly and getting pushback in many circumstances from Jewish anti-Zionists themselves. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. What the do you think is going to happen? So yeah, the reality of the matter is it's almost impossible to push back against this stuff because on the one hand, what I'm saying is entirely different than what Candace Owens is saying. However, what Candace Owens is saying and what Nick Fuentes is saying is identical to what Jake Tapper is saying. All Jews care about is Israel.
At the convention, there was a whole night about hostages being held in Gaza, a Harvard student talking about anti-Semitism at Harvard. It was one of the most Jewish nights at any convention, and I went to the one with Lieberman.
That's what they are united on. So if 90% of the media is consistently dialing in this narrative over and over again, that Jews care about Israel, Jews care about Israel, all Jews care about is Israel. If you speak out against Israel, then you hate Jews. Every Jew is a Zionist. Every Jew you've ever encountered is a Zionist, over and over and over and over again, both wokely and also from the anti-woke perspective. It's going to be an abject failure. Anyway, yeah, here's also Tucker Carlson putting up LeBron numbers on this.
TPUSA did a poll during AmFest, or I guess it was after AmFest, and they asked the audience, what they considered to be the greatest threat to America. And they did put radical Islam at number one. I'm wondering where you think those sentiments are coming from. I mean, I've heard you say before that this is an op and that we all know which foreign government it's actually coming from. Which government is it, and can you explain how that operation works? How is it, kind of lured into those?
It comes from the Israeli government and its many defenders and informal employees in the United States, of course. And I guess I would just say if that was actually, I don't know how people respond to the poll. I don't know who.
Tucker Carlson, if he runs, will win 100% of the Arab vote, will win 100% of the vote from any number of different diasporas that come from like the region, the third world in general. It's crazy.
But, I believe in measuring reality a little more empirically. And, I don't know anyone in the United States in the last 24 years who's been killed by radical Islam. I know a lot of people who have killed themselves, a lot. I know people who've died of drug ODs, more than a few. I know people can't get jobs. None of the boys in my daughter's classes can get jobs. None of those white boys can get jobs. They're being destroyed, by Adderall and video games and porn. Like I see millions of Americans being destroyed, and none of it is at the hands of radical Islam. Is radical Islam a greater danger than OnlyFans? It's not even close.
You want to know something crazy? To the uninitiated, you read this as a guy who's being socially conservative. To the real ball knowers, this is exactly how Tucker Carlson bakes in the same exact commentary that Nick Fuentes would without ever naming the Jew. Now, there is no issue with saying like, oh, people's brains are being poisoned by drugs. It's a very basic conservative position that pornography is bad and it's actually warping the consciousness of the average American child. And I think, unfortunately, it's a very popular position, especially even amongst the youth now. But there's a reason why he's bringing up OnlyFans, because the reason why he's bringing up OnlyFans is not because of OnlyFans' popularity. The reason why he brings up OnlyFans is to say it's not radical Islam that's harming Americans. It's actually the pornographers like OnlyFans. OnlyFans, famously owned by a Jewish guy who donates quite heavily to the IDF. Do you understand? So Tucker, when called in the question, or donates to AIPAC, sorry, maybe not the IDF, when called in the question can just be like, oh, you're being ridiculous. Of course, I'm not mentioning that. I've always had a long career of criticizing pornography. But what he's actually doing in this moment is not being critical of pornography. What he's doing in this moment is saying, like, Americans haven't been harmed by Muslims in quite a while. They've been harmed by Jews. Jews are doing pornography. Jews are warping the consciousness. It is expert level anti-Semitism.
Is at the hands of radical Islam. Is radical Islam a greater danger than OnlyFans? It's not even close. Turning some huge percentage of American women into prostitutes. That's not radical Islam doing that, actually. So anyone who believes that lie, I feel sorry for. But it doesn't reflect the lived reality of anyone I've ever met in the United States. And I observe this for a living. It doesn't mean I'm right, but it means I'm not a casual observer. I'm a close observer because that's my job. And I just think that that's insane. And it would be yet another triumph of propaganda and theory over reality. So you tell people, this is the whole game. This is how, the United States has somehow tied itself to the anchor of Gaza. Like, why are we responsible?
Dude, for the record, the reality of the matter is, I don't care for his assessment regardless. I'm just simply I'm putting you on game. He's not just taking an anti-porn route here, which is classic social conservatism. He's also kind of tying it back to Jews without ever saying it. He's saying radical Islam didn't convert you to become a pornographer in the way that OnlyFans did. But it's basically like a higher level dog whistle that if you're tuned into Tucker, you know. And as someone who has watched a ton of Tucker Carlson. I know exactly what he's doing here. He will just never say Jews. He will never imply Jews. He will never come near the implication of saying Jews. It's just for the real ball knowers out there. But I don't even agree with the assessment outside of, even if he wasn't being anti-Semitic, I still wouldn't agree with the assessment because like he just relegating it back to social conservatism. You can just keep it at what kind of danger does radical Islam present in the United States of America? You have to be a real dumbass to believe that. And the only reason why many people do believe that is because Israel keeps farming it over and over again. Well, I mean, as a student of empire, he's not wrong about Israel being a liability. God, I hate when snakes use correct information to push white supremacy. That's why he's dangerous and no ally ever. I don't even agree with that. I think Israel is a ally still from the position of empire. Like a lot of people think like, oh, they take this attitude where it's like, well, the Iraq war was really bad for America. It's like, no, it wasn't. There's never been a moment where we've ever done something in terms of foreign policy that was good for Americans. That's not a part of the conversation. It's what Americans, which Americans. For capital owners, the Iraq war was fantastic. When people say Israel is a liability, they're bringing us into all these wars. It's like, yeah, regular ass Americans, that sucks. But you know what it's good for? Capital owners, the military industrial complex, people who profit off of death and destruction. That's it. So yeah, technically Israel is a bad ally, but it's not a bad ally from the point of empire. It certainly ends up reaching and taking a lot more than it gives back. And that's frustrating. I think it's embarrassing for Americans, for old school WASP nationalists like Tucker Carlson cut from a good cloth. It's embarrassing to be humiliated by Jewish donors like this. 100%. That's what it is. That's how he sees it. That's how I think a lot of, let's say, white nationalists or maybe white nationalists of a different variety, neo-Nazis, that's how they see it. They want Israel here in America. Some of them do. But they hate how embarrassing it is that this glorious nation, the number one nation on the planet, a nation for prosperity for those who work hard, strong men, builders that comprise the foundation of this beautiful country that has dominated all around the globe and has built so much prosperity everywhere, is now being dominated embarrassingly by our own vassal, that would not exist if it wasn't for the $300 billion that we gave them for the last 80 years. The vassal that was handed over to us by the other superpower that we also took over, that we took ownership over, the British. The sun never set on the British Empire, and now they are our vassal as well. That's how domineering of a force we are, and that force is being humiliated in broad daylight by our own vassal that constantly demands more and gives us nothing in return. God, I could be such a good propagandist on the right. You have no idea. Holy shit. Because a good propagandist has to say the truth. And especially if you say the truth about an issue that other people don't want to say, oh my Lord, you will be seen as a legend. But that's the reality. It's just, that's what it is. They want to do Israel here in America, but for whites, who knows what that means. But they also, on top of that, want to change this dynamic. They want to stop being run by people who put Israel first. Our Middle Eastern policy is entirely dominated by Israel. That's it. It's entirely dominated by people who do put Israel first in many instances. And it doesn't matter if they're Jewish or not. There's plenty, more often than not, they're not even Jewish. They're wasps, right? And I think that's also kind of an ugly humiliation for someone like Tucker. Again, Tucker's dad was in the CIA.
And so when I applied to CIA, and I've taken a lot of crap, including from Putin, like, oh, you're from a CIA family. Well, yeah, obviously my father worked in conjunction with CIA. I mean, that's what that is. And I tried to join the CIA, but I'm not being false about it.
He considers himself a legacy American. And now he sees other people who are also supposed to be legacy Americans just like him, that was responsible for this big, beautiful nation that dominated, that tamed the barbarians, the indigenous population, and endlessly expanded all the way to the West Coast and made something of this country that then turned around and, defeated the Nazis, which maybe Tucker doesn't think was too good of an idea. Maybe we fought the wrong side from Tucker's perspective. Who knows? I'm not going to get into that. But it's been this like massive cultural force dominating the globe. And then this country, the wealthiest nation on the planet, is basically captive to the interests of a tiny group of people that just get to dictate whatever the we do in the Middle East, he's going to be pissed off. It's humiliating. My perspective is different than Tucker's, obviously. I think we let the Zionist advocacy groups do whatever the they want because the very same individuals that are doing this domination at the behest of capital love when Israel destabilizes. But my point is, I think we let Israel do it because we like that Israel's doing it. Do you get it? Because we enjoy that Israel is this destabilizing factor.
Only fans are playing video games all day. If you've convinced them that radical Islam is their number one problem, you are the most effective propagandist in history. I mean, that's an unbelievable feat. I haven't seen the poll. I'm taking your word for it. And again, I don't know how many people responded to it.
Yeah.
But that is deranged. And by the way, if you think radical Islam is the threat that you claim it is, I'm hardly endorsing it. I'm opposed to it. I'm against radical anything. I'm the most temperamentally moderate person. I'm a fucking 56-year-old wasp, dude. I'm like, I am moderate, okay?
Yeah.
But I just don't like lying. But if you sincerely believe radical Islam is the greatest threat, then why aren't they asking the government? Why isn't Ben Shapiro asking the government to fully declassify the 9/11 files?
Right.
I wonder why that is. Any sense of why that might be? Seriously, if you really think radical Islam is that great a threat, tell me why you're hiding basic facts about 9/11. And the answer is, of course, it's not what they told us it was.
That's crazy. God, he's so good. He's Protestant. I would have thought he's Catholic. No, dude, that's why I said he's like the OG stock American, dude. What are you talking about? Bro, he hit OnlyFans at 9/11. He's saying, who's more dangerous to America? Radical Islam, which didn't do 9/11, but radical Jews who did 9/11, just like, radical Jews who are doing OnlyFans. If you can't pick up what he's putting down, you inevitably will when the time comes and he actually does say it, when it's like allowed, when it's allowed to be openly said. But that's what he's doing. And he's such a good propagandist for this reason, because he basically presents it as like this thing that's like obviously commonplace. I mean, what's going on? He never says it's the Jews. In any case, he does believe in great replacement. No, yes. But once again, he does not say the great replacement is by Jews either. Like, he won't say that. But yeah, both Tucker and Candace are actually positioning themselves as defending Islam, which, there is a lot of Islamophobia in this country. I'm sorry. You are never going to win a Muslim vote ever again. If you run around consistently defending Israel and also beef up Islamophobic narratives, never actually talk about Islamophobia, and you only consistently, when Islamophobia is happening at the systematic level, right, in a way where anti-Semitism is not, okay, at least not for the time being. I always qualify. It might change. Things might change in the future. But the point I'm making is, when you don't do that, when you don't ever like speak out against Islamophobia as like supposedly the progressive left, the liberals, you let it foment and maybe even lean into it like Kirsten Gillibrand did, right? And simultaneously always talk about anti-Semitism, 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 anti-Semitism. Most people would have watched along from other marginalized backgrounds too, will go, the do you mean anti-Semitism? Like, I'm thinking of like Latino people, black and brown people, right? People that are victim to systematic racism with regular frequency, constantly hearing people chirp about white people, Jewish white people over and over again. That's what dominates the media. Anyone who leans into this shit is unironically going to win favors with those guys too, even if they're objectively racist. And Tucker Carlson, at least despite being a WASP supremacist, Muslims are 1% of the population. Can't they just chalk it up to a loss? First of all, that is clearly an important demographic in places like Michigan. That's number one. Number two, it's not just Muslims. Do you not understand? When you say Israel's dominating American politics, you're actually capturing a very diverse coalition of voters' interests. That's number one. Many of which are in the throes of the Democratic Party, many of which are actually pro-Democratic Party, or at least in the coalition that is most likely to vote for Democrats. But then also on top of that, when you turn around and say stuff like, the media is constantly talking about the harm that is falling against Jewish people, the media is constantly matching up anti-Semitism, constantly talking about anti-Semitism when, black and brown people are getting dominated, when they're having a hard time making ends meet, and they are victim to systematic racism, which Tucker's never going to say that, obviously. But the reality is, I'm saying that. I don't know why I'm doing Tucker voice. But when the media is constantly talking about anti-Semitism as a primary driver of the conversation instead of talking about like what Israel's doing, for example, and how Israel is intervening in domestic affairs, for example. And then on top of that, you're from a black or brown background and you hear that over and over and over and over again. Yeah, you're going to lose every non-Jewish minority and then think you can still win.